Welcome back, everyone. This is Soulboat Sessions, the podcast about music and fermentation, and this episode is really special to us here. If you've been here at the brewery on the farm in the last couple of years, on a Wednesday and then on a Thursday later on, you would have experienced something potentially that we find quite magical. We call it the Bluegrass Jam. It really is just a gathering unlike anything else we've ever had at the brewery, an open bluegrass jam for local musicians to come and sit in and get to know each other and play. Sometimes, you know, traditional bluegrass, all new songs, originals, standards, fiddle tunes, you name it. People have been coming from long distances increasingly to come and be a part of this really just totally magical thing that has unfolded and brought me personally a lot of joy and a lot of new friends. So I'm just so grateful to have the opportunity to be doing that. And one of the first people who ever came here to the brewery during a bluegrass jam was none other than CAM URNES. Cameron URNES, a retired school teacher, an educator who was so enthusiastic and so helpful and so just all around great when he came and gave a lot of helpful pointers and then immediately rallied the local bluegrass players and brought them here to the brewery for a series of jams that have now solidified into a real tradition. So it's just one of those things that we're so grateful to have seen develop here at the brewery, and it brings us a lot of happiness to sit around and play rain or shine and try new songs and really just kind of settle into a different groove one day a week at least. So if you're hearing this and you've been to the brewery on a Wednesday, Thursday, then you might recognize the fine playing of CAM URNES, who moved to the area after college sometime. Let's see here. I want to make sure I get this exactly right. Going back before college, Cam was born in the San Francisco Bay Area. And he says he was raised with a whole bunch of sisters and a couple of brothers, and his first musical experience was singing in the church choir, and that his first instrument was a pawn shop plectrum banjo just lying around the house, and that he drilled a hole in it to add a fifth string to make it into a 5-string style banjo just before going off to college in Santa Barbara. There he delved headfirst into what is thought of or often called the 3-finger Scruggs style after Earl Scruggs, the bluegrass banjo style. And then later learning clawhammer or old-time banjo, which is what he brought to share with us today. Soon after or getting there to Santa Barbara, he was forming bands, playing square dances, and developing a lifelong passion for the instrument and for this kind of music, which we love so much. So grab a beer, relax, and enjoy this episode of Soulboat Sessions with banjoist CAM URNES. Where's your beer?
Right here. Salute.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Happy to be here.
Beer in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thanks for coming by, Cam. It's great to see you.
You too.
I think of you as you are the ultimate brewery fan. You came to the first bluegrass jam. You have come to many dozens, if not hundreds of those after. You even helped us can some beer.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, you're covering all the boxes here, man. So
yeah.
We were so delighted that you wanted to come over and hang out, and
Yeah, thanks.
But so tell us a little bit about yourself, Cam. Are you from here and your backstory?
I am okay. I lived in McMinnville, just down the road, of course, for nearly 40 years now. Now I'm retired, but I used to be a school counselor in that area.
A school counselor?
School counselor, yeah. I worked with little kids, elementary school. I taught for a while as well before that. But that's how I finished out my career. Started playing music when I was in college. So that was 15 years ago. No, actually about 50 years ago. My first instrument was the banjo.
Wow. You started with the banjo.
I started with the
You went
banjo.
all the way
Five-string
there.
banjo,
Like,
yeah.
that's a bold man right there. You're like,
Yeah.
old musician is like, I'm going to pick that one with, 5 strings. And
Yeah, I've since picked up the mandolin and then the guitar, and so I started. Back I went to college in Santa Barbara, California, and along with the college stuff, there was these like recreational kind of classes that they let people do in the college, but it wasn't really part of the college. So for $10 or $15, I had a group of it was probably 4 or 5 of us that wanted to play the banjo. So there was a guy that played in a bluegrass band, and I just scored a banjo down there, and so I signed up for that and fooled around with the bluegrass a little bit and learned about bluegrass. Saw my first bluegrass band, the New Grass Revival.
oh, no way.
Yeah, back when Sam Bush and
Yeah.
and
That was your first show.
it was my first bluegrass
Whoa.
show. Yeah.
Nice start.
Yeah, soon after that, I got to see Doc Watson, and I started doing a little bit of that. And Vassar Clemens came to our college.
Wow.
And then the Circle,
Old and in
Will
the
the
Way,
Circle
and,
We
yeah.
Unbroken record came out about that time, 73. I don't know exactly when, 73 or 4 probably.
Which
Maybe
one?
a little, Will the Circle Be Unbroken.
Oh, right.
That was the
Nitty
Nitty Gritty
Gritty.
Dirt Band, and that was kind of what brought the sort of all us old hippies, young hippies, to recognize bluegrass music.
Do you remember what that was like? When you first heard it, was it like, over at a house party, somebody had the record, or do you remember that? Because
I don't remember the first time I heard it. No, I don't. That would be great. I wish
beer
I
involved?
did, because it was just like it.
Yeah.
And then I worked at a summer camp that summer, way up in Northern California. And I took the banjo up there, and I really didn't know how to play it. I knew how to do a roll. I knew how to play Cripple Creek, and I knew how to play I knew how to play banjo in the hollow, and I started to work on Salt Creek. So 3 tunes I knew. The guy was teaching us, I think it was Salty Dog Blues, and I didn't quite get it, and the lessons were over, and I got frustrated. And then I went to this camp, and I met one of my best friends still today, who was a flat picker. And so he was really into Hank Williams music and stuff. This is all sort of new stuff for me. I grew up listening to pop music and rock music, And so I got real excited about it then. I went back to college. The bluegrass class was not offered again, but a guy offered a class in traditional clawhammer banjo, old-time banjo, which nobody knew about. And I was like, yeah, I'll try that. Great. I loved it. That's where I learned to play clawhammer banjo back in 1973 or 4. And I never put finger picks on again for the next 30 years.
Wow.
I played open back banjo, I played with fiddles, I played a lot of Irish music. I picked up a mandolin so I could play Celtic stuff, learned to play the guitar, here, yeah. And then while I was here, some buddies of mine decided to brew beer. So one of the guys had a place up in Yamhill. It had an outbuilding on 10 acres of land, and we turned that into our brewery.
The woodshed. Yeah.
The woodshed, and I think I shared with you, there were 3 of us, Cam, Alan, and Dick, and so we called our beer Campbell Dick Beer.
It's okay. You can swear on the podcast. You can say whatever you want.
It tasted as bad as it sounded.
Yeah.
I used to call it the beer with a great name that tasted like shit. Tasted like piss. So, but we did that for about 10 years. We brewed, and then I got to know, we got Rick Allen's original equipment, because I knew Rick, and another guy at one of the other Allen knew Rick. And so when he was selling his stuff from Heater Allen, we bought that from him. That's what we got brewing on, all grain brewing, but we never could get it very good, I have to say.
I mean, that's the pain and sort of like the glory of home brewing is it's all lives in your mind at first. You're like, I'm going to make the best beer. I'm going to get all this equipment. I'm going to follow this amazing book. And you're reading Charlotte Papazian and you've got it all figured out in your mind. And this is going to be incredible. You're telling everyone, like, I'm making beer. And then they taste it. And maybe some people are, beginner's luck, right? My first beer was not so lucky. And I had lofty goals for this beer. I had named it. I made labels. I had a party
too,
basically.
Yeah.
And look before you leap, man, because I opened this stuff up, and it was called Springbrook Brown Ale. It was named for this farm because I was like, someday, from the first smell of hops, I'm like, gonna brew beer on that farm, and I handed it out to everybody, and you can guess the rest. It actually was spat out by one person over the banister. It created kind of a scene. I was horrified. I couldn't believe it was that bad, and I was like, yeah, it's not bad.
Well, as long as we made really like Irish stout and stuff, it was fine. It was when we tried to make more subtle kind of beer, it just came out awful. I'm not a huge fan of esters in beer, and so I don't really like saison beers and that kind of thing. And we would get these warm fermenting and all kinds of weird kind of flavors in it. As long as it was cool and we were doing just red ales and stuff or stouts, it was coming out okay, or pale ales. But yeah, and then lo and behold, I retired, and you go see your doctor, and he said, you got too much glucose in your blood, and you got to cut down on your carbohydrate thing. So that kind of took all the fun away.
So you stopped eating bread so you could continue drinking beer.
And honestly, but the bread was a part of it. We'd always cut a loaf. I'd always bake a loaf of bread, and we'd get some cheese, and we'd sit up all day long, the three of us, bullshit all day long. Other guys would come in, and we'd eat bread and drink homebrew or whatever beer we had around. Sometimes there's other stuff. And it just kind of lost its fun.
I mean, that scene is so beautiful. You're with your best friends. You're in the woodshed or the little, hut behind the farm or little barn thing, and you've got beer you're brewing. You got little equipment laying around. You've got little vessels bubbling away. You've got your instruments. You're playing tunes. I mean, that sounds kind of blissful.
It does. Idyllic. Yes. Yeah.
Idyllic. And like everybody should have those kinds of escapes, in their life where you can just go and hang out, crack some beers and shoot the shit and kind of just unwind a little, no pressure, that's awesome.
I miss the guys. I mean, they're still my friends. I still see them, but I miss those times that we were hanging around doing it.
Yeah. What are some of the other kinds of beers that you remember enjoying that you brewed? Like, was there another fave that popped up?
Well, we actually, this was in the era when Pliny the Elder was the beer.
Oh yeah,
right. So
still is in many parts.
Yeah, so we got a clone for that, and we did that, and we actually had one of them ended up pretty good, real strong, super
hoppy beer,
super hoppy and super high alcohol. It was quite good. We did like just kind of a pale ale. Rick came up to get us started, and that one turned out pretty good. One of the problems for me is that I really got hooked on some of Rick's beers, and I really love Pilsner beers now, and we didn't have the cooling equipment to lager beer.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have jacketed fermenters and all that kind of stuff, and we didn't have a room with a cooler in it to move them to. So that was the other reason I sort of lost my interest in brewing.
Because you tasted the world's best Pilsner.
Because I tasted the world's best Pilsner.
Well, that is so true. Once you taste that beer, a lot of people have had that same feeling. I mean, I remember when I moved back home here to Oregon, I had been away for a long time, and my friends in Portland were still running this restaurant called Noble Rot. And they told me about Heater Allen Pilsner, and I started hearing about it through the beer media. I was living in New York City, far from here, but the reputation was starting to blow up in 2000. Right after they opened, I want to say in 2007, and I could really go down a rabbit hole about Heater Allen, and so I won't go too far. But like they were ranked #1 in the world by Rate Beer, which is a site that isn't really so much referenced as much anymore. But anyway, that made a huge splash, and it was like coming out of a small family-run brewery in McMinnville. So
right.
for those of any of you who are listening who haven't had Heater Allen, you need to know about this beer. You got to seek it out. It is classic German style pilsner, the best in America, and they won the World Beer Cup again this year for pilsner.
Yeah.
And this is against every old classic. This is against Weinstefan and the Bavaria, the Munich guys and everything else. It's a remarkable story. So I want to talk more about them and the home brewing equipment and the brewery equipment here for a second, and then I want to hear all about Clawhammer.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're here to talk Clawhammer too.
A couple more things to say about Heater Allen.
Please do.
I was like everybody else from about 2005 on. I was a total hophead. I could not get enough hops in an IPA. And then I met Rick, and we were hanging out at his place one day, and I had a coastal common, I think was.
Okay.
That was my transition beer. It was a great beer, really just an ale of some sort. I don't really know. You call it Coastal Common. And then I had the Pilsner, and that was it.
All bets are off. Yeah, all bets are off. It's classic. It's very, it's floral, it's dry, it's biscuity, it's got an assertive bitterness.
Yeah.
And in this age of everything sweet, so many, hoppy beers have become sweet beers too.
Yep.
And sweetness is just the American palate. I mean, in all things, not just in beer. I mean, we eat something like 147 pounds of sugar per American a year.
Well, not me anymore.
Yeah,
Those are my old days.
Please don't.
But before we just move on from this, just to say, your beers are superb.
Oh, you don't have to say that.
Yeah. I mean, they really are. You're giving them a run for the money, and your variety is pretty outrageous too. Unfortunately, I just don't sample a whole lot of the more funky beers.
No worries. Okay, that's the end of the interview. No, I'm just kidding.
Get out of here.
No, it's variety is the spice of life.
Yeah.
And we have something for everybody, I guess.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
it's so cool that we share this interest with Rick and his family and the brewery, and I've told you this story, and I'll save it for another day. But that business I would say kind of changed the beer world in a way. You could almost think of it as like, okay, when a California wine, ranked in a Bordeaux blind tasting,
Right.
Here comes like a small family-run brewery that comes out of essentially nowhere. Rick wasn't a lifelong brewer; he had a career in banking, and then becomes an avid home brewer. He brewed I don't know how many dozens or hundreds of recipes before he committed to scaling up and getting it dialed. But that really was like the shot heard around the world, and now lagers, here it is, more than, they just turned 10, are the dominant style in a lot of craft breweries, and not, of course around the world still. So anyway, kudos to them for what they did when to start a tiny little snowball that became a very big part of the craft beer world, and then very much inspired me. I was like, well, they can make great beer in a little small setup, and so tell me about the homebrew setup then, because the gear.
So the gear we got from him was essentially 3 tanks, 3 20-gallon tanks, and then I think a 10-gallon fermenter conical and a little 5-gallon conical fermenter.
Yeah, this is the system that created.
This is the system.
Yeah.
That created. Yeah, the original. Those when he was bottling it 22-ounce bottles. This was what he was using, and it was his brother's.
Wow. Okay. And so you were a fan of the brewery. How did it happen that you suddenly took the stuff home, or to the cabin on the hill?
He was upgrading, and he was so. A friend of mine who was a musician who I played in a band with. He was a cider maker up on Ribbon Ridge, White Oak Cider, if you've ever seen it, and he works for the Tennell. What's his winery up there? Anyway, Alan's place is right next to it, and he was working for them. And then Rick's also a big wine fan.
Yeah.
So anyway, he had connected with my friend Alan, and they were friends, and then we got to be friends. And so when he decided to sell his stuff, I don't know how it came up, but I said, sure, well, or Alan or me, one of us said, yeah, we'll take it. And then we had our other friend Dick, who'd been talking about setting up a brewery and wanting to set up a brewery. So it just all kind of came together, and yeah.
That is awesome. That is just, we were talking about this last week. This idea, like, there's good vibrations in that gear. You know what I mean? Say what you want, no matter how spiritual or religious or atheist or whatever you are. There's no doubting that homebrew gear had some good mojo, right?
Because you have the second generation, right? You have the first commercial.
That's right.
Tanks
we do.
And stuff, yeah.
We do, and it was like. It was this weird way, weird way the universe kind of like kicks out little opportunities your way if you're looking for them, if you have your head down and or you're manifesting in some way. And that sounds kind of woo-woo, but I actually think it happens some ways.
Or if you're open to it.
You got to be open to it.
Right.
You have to have your mind open.
Yeah.
And I've been dreaming about this brewery since college, since '92 was the first homebrew batch, and thinking, well, how will I ever get equipment? How will I ever afford it? And all the questions that any startup brewery has. And we heard through the grapevine that Rick was planning on expanding. And it was like, first of all, super exciting, because it was a brand completely, wholeheartedly I've been rooting for since the first taste.
Right.
And then I was also just immediately thinking, well, if he's expanding, he's going to get rid of that cool copper brewhouse. Maybe I should go down there. So I went down there, and I just kind of like darkened the door and walked in one day. And if you've been there many times, but Heater Allen's tasting room was basically one door and one little, very simple tasting room, grain sack pinned up on the wall. And I said, hey, Rick, how's it going? And, we'd met a couple times before, certainly at beer events. And I was kind of a fanboy, I was just like geeking out on their beer. And I talked to him for a little while, and I said, well, I'm thinking about doing this. And I quickly clarified that we're not trying to start a German-style brewery and making pilsner.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do with the gear? And he was like, well, honestly, you want to see it? It's just, it's just out here in the parking lot. So we go outside, we go in the parking lot, and it's sitting under a tarp. Oh, it's like this is like the garage find when or Pawn Stars or something. Not quite like that, but like where you're like, wait, how can this be? Where you mean the system is just sitting behind here under a tarp in the rain? And he's like, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet.
How quickly can I get a truck here?
Yeah, like exactly. But I had no idea what I was doing. It's already over my head, even thinking about this stuff. It seemed like. But I was like, so what are you going to do? And, well, I might list it with a broker. I don't know. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be good if to maybe keep it local, in the area? Yeah, I think I'd like so. I'd like that. That makes some sense. And I said, okay, well, I'm planning this thing. It won't be, we're not trying to compete with you. And back in those days, there were not breweries out here. Here, Allen was like it. Yeah. And so there, I was
Golden Valley was already going.
Yes, certainly Golden Valley was there. Yeah. And I even spent a summer working in there and just cleaning out the mash tun. For John Eliason was the brewer there. Remember that guy? Super nice. And so I was very careful to tell him, like, look, we're not trying to compete here, but I'm interested in the old gear, and what do you want first? So we talked it over, and I didn't have any money at all, but I had this vision, and I figured if I could get a hold of this system that had so much good mojo, that would be the ultimate, wind, or what do you even want to? What do you call that? Like the ultimate motivator. Like there would be no turning back, right? Yeah. So I didn't have the resources yet, but I brought a bag of hazelnuts from the farm. I brought a little 5-pound bag of filberts. It's like a brick of coffee from Starbucks or something. And I brought it in there one day, shortly after. And I said, Rick, thanks for talking with me. I'm really even embarrassed to even bring this up, or I'm scared to even say this out loud, but would you accept this 5-pound bag of filberts as a deposit?
The story gets better all the time.
I'm not kidding. And he looked at me with a straight face, and he said, well, is there real money behind it? Or something like that, and like, yes. And
He's a banker,
I promise I will, you take this, don't sell it to anyone else. I will go out and make it happen. And he shook my hand. And it was the moment I changed my life, that moment. Because then I knew, oh shit, here goes.
That's a
You know,
great,
it's
that's
real.
a great story. Yeah.
So I remember driving away going like, well, I guess we got the brew house sort of lined up on now what?
Yeah.
But it was amazing, and they're just so awesome. And I could go on and on about them, but that's the brew house at Wolves and People Here. That's it's in there. So,
That's awesome.
Anyway, thanks for sharing that. That's so cool. I love that story.
Are you talking about music?
Yeah, let's do it. I want to ask you too. You were starting to talk about clawhammer banjo.
Right.
Now, can you tell us what is the difference? Where does banjo itself? Where does it come from, and where does clawhammer and the style of open back banjo? How does that differ? And like, what are people going to hear that's so unique and different?
Yeah, good. I can play both styles, so I can do a little example of both.
Awesome.
If you want to get to that. But
Okay.
the clawhammer, the open back band, the banjo, of course, the story is that it's really was brought over on the slave ships. So it's actually, I think its origins are in the African music, but specifically the 5-string banjo is an Appalachian instrument. It goes along with. I mean, it's a great accompaniment to a fiddle.
Why is that,
Appalachian
you think?
fiddle? Rhythmically, it just is delightful. I mean,
Yeah.
I love playing with fiddle players, there's bass. Well, we were talking earlier. There's a tenor banjo, which is a 4-string banjo that you play with a flat pick, and it's melodic. You just usually play melodies, and they use that for jazz in the United States, and then the Celtic music uses that 4-string banjo. So I don't know. We need to go into that a whole lot, but what's unique in America is the 5-string banjo, and there's two main ways to play it. There's this clawhammer stuff, and it's clawhammer because you hold your hand up like a claw,
Okay.
and it's all down picking. Pete Seeger did something where he would pick up on a string and then strum down and hit the 5th string.
And letting it resonate.
Yeah,
It's very resonant sounding.
that was the Pete Seeger method, but the true Appalachian one is all down picking.
Okay.
And it's in a measure you've got 4 beats, and so you start off with picking a single note, usually a bass note or a melody note, and then you do a quick little strum down and catch that 5th string on the way out. The 5th string
That is delightful. That is like
the 5th string is
light.
the 5th string is a drone. It plays in whatever key you're playing in.
Okay.
You rarely fret it.
Interesting. I didn't know that. So that's what gives it that. There's a kind of a chimey, bell, like a ringing bell feel to it that continues on and on.
Yeah.
It's the drone.
Yeah, you can fret it up here if you're up here, and I have there's some bluegrass styles where you fret it quite a bit, but I don't do a whole lot of that.
What was the first song you learned on for clawhammer style? Do you remember? In your lesson?
Yeah, I do remember, but do I remember how to play it? It was I can't remember that tune.
Well, it probably was something contemporary, relatively.
Yeah.
Like what guitarists learn or not Blackberry Blossom, but some other. What's the song I'm thinking of? There's sort of standards that people start out.
Right.
So,
I think it was one called Old Jimmy Sutton.
Okay, let's hear some.
Let's see if I can remember it. I don't know that I can remember it, but I just remember the name, and I probably haven't played it in 40 years, so I'm not sure I can bring it up. I was going to say one thing I can do is like one of the early ones I learned is a tune, the Flatt & Scruggs tune called Cripple Creek, and it's
Cripple Creek.
pretty common. And I can play it in both different styles, so
Okay.
we can kind of contrast if that's.
That would be amazing. We'd love to hear that.
So I'll do a little. Let me get my finger picks out, and I'll pick it first in a sort of Scruggs style. I don't use this banjo a whole lot for finger picking, like I don't use my other one a whole lot for frailing, just because the strings are a little higher off the fretboard for frailing. I told you. Sorry about that. We're gonna have to retune. Basically Cripple Creek in Scruggs style.
Yep. So that was the down picking
no, that was,
on the thumb?
No, that was
all up,
totally finger picking.
All finger picking?
Yeah, 5-finger picking, yeah. Scruggs style after Earl Scruggs, the great banjo player, and then I'll play it clawhammer style. Yeah. And so the basic beat is the, and then you can drop your thumb down to pick up individual strings. I like the clawhammer. It's a nice, gentle sound.
Gentle, yeah. I would say there's just like maybe a touch softer, touch more resonation. Like the notes kind of blending and chiming a little longer.
Right. When we're in a big jam, it's crazy. You can't really hear it when I'm playing. That's why I have that big resonator banjo when I'm playing. If there's 10 of us playing, it really can cut through. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, the banjo of all instruments, though, really is it so announces itself, in a group. It's a game changer.
It's true. We're the butt of everybody's joke.
Yeah, you gotta. I'm sure you tell us your favorite banjo joke. I mean, in a
the one
self-flagellating way, right?
Yeah. It's like what the definition of perfect pitch is throwing a banjo into a dumpster and it lands on an accordion. So we love having accordions around because then they're the bunch of the joke.
Right. Yeah. The totem pole or the pecking order. Oh, that's classic. That's such a beautiful kind of like spookiness to that. It's hard to describe a melancholy that sort of yearning that you hear in that. It is. It's almost an apprehension in a way. Mm-hmm. There's tension.
Tension in it. Yeah, I would say. Yeah.
You think so? What
I think there's some. It's the.
Ninth or
what is that?
The high note.
Let's see. I'm playing in the key of A, and that's a C. A D. So I don't know.
Yeah, who knows why, right?
Yeah.
But somehow
it does. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so nice. So Appalachia being the home of so much amazing music and so many crossing cultures, from the Celtic music making its way in there, music from West Africa, from slave culture migrating in, even maybe a tiny bit of Creole and Cajun type music somehow bleeding up into the region. It's truly incredible, musically, and all American too, right? In the sense of being like it was born. This music was not necessarily derived from this land, but born here and kind of reborn
absolutely
here.
This Appalachian music is truly American music. People get it confused with bluegrass music, which is, I tell them, well, bluegrass music is modern music, and they're like, what are you talking about? It sounds like it's ancient. It does, but when you think about it, it was started in the 40s or the 30s or something, whenever Bill Monroe came along and decided, we're gonna do this. So,
right. And if you could describe it succinctly, what would you say is the difference between Appalachian and bluegrass, like sonically speaking?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit. The banjo is real central because of the difference in the way you play a banjo. In it. It's the bluegrass has a lot more bluesy kinds of notes in it. The bluesy scales. It uses solos, which Appalachian music, much like Celtic music, is. If I say, let's play a tune old-time style, I mean, we're all going to play it together.
Right. You're playing the same melody, and maybe if someone's singing, if there happens to be singing in it, it is a kind of on the same exact melody.
Yes.
And it creates a kind of that, a unison feel.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's an old-time jam that happens up in Portland, and you go up there, and it's, walk in the room, there's 20 fiddles.
All playing the same notes. Or trying
to. And they will, they'll retune their fiddles depending on what key they're playing in. Wow. And you'll play an hour in the key or an hour and a half in the key of G. And then it's time to go to the key of A.
Oh, interesting.
I don't play till 2 a.m. anymore. So I'm always leaving, before we get to very many keys. But I think that's the essence of it. I liked what you mentioned about the singing, because even singing is real, follows the melodies of the instruments. Mm-hmm. And if you listen to the Appalachian singing, this sounds like a fiddle.
Yeah,
like a violin.
The exact high-pitched, throaty kind of tenor voices. Yeah.
Not so much harmony singing. Yeah. That was kind of a little. I'm not sure where all that comes in, but the Carter family was just beautiful harmony singers, but I don't know that that's a little different than Appalachian music. Mm-hmm. But the big thing about bluegrass, it's really performance music as opposed to just sitting around dancing. Square dance music is a lot of old time music is for square dancing.
Interesting. So the setting changed a little bit, and then the instrumentation, as I understand it, I'm way out of my depth here, but like the first bigger guitars started to come along that could compete with banjos, like volume-wise. So the bodies of guitars were getting bigger.
The big dreadnoughts.
In Hawaii, did you know this? There's a crazy history that came out recently that I wasn't aware of, but some of the first dreadnoughts were coming out of Hawaii in order to be audible above, in certain settings, and there were competitions between the luthiers, building guitars over there, and then ukuleles as well being built in Hawaii, and then becoming popularized in America. Right. Suddenly, there's a uke industry here in New York. Yeah. So it's just so interesting to see how there's an industry that kind of mirrors the popular sentiment, right? I mean, that's so true of beer too. Like, not to change the subject back to beer, but the gear evolves, the techniques evolve, the tastes evolve among those who enjoy it. And it's kind of a symbiotic relationship.
Beer and music, I mean, just kind of go together, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, instrumentation.
Just at a barn. Right?
Yeah. But instrumentation was fairly similar. I mean, the fiddle and the guitar and the banjo and the mandolin and a bass. The nice thing about the big dreadnought guitars is if you didn't have a bass, you had those bass notes. It would ring through.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. So maybe that's why they were getting bigger, in order just to be heard, and Yeah, fiddle, so incredibly loud. Banjo, very an awesomely powerful instrument, right?
Yeah.
So there's no way a little parlor guitar can be heard in that setting, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. But then you're saying banjos got bigger too.
Well, yeah, that's true. And
is a competition.
well, what they did was they put a big metal tone ring on a bluegrass banjo, and then a resonator on it, and it just
pushing that sound.
Huge sound. Yeah, my bluegrass banjo. My wife comes upstairs. It's like, what are you doing? You're gonna go deaf. I try to mute it, but it doesn't sound very good.
Oh wow! Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool.
We should play a tune together.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd love to.
Let's play Whiskey Before Breakfast at a nice afternoon. I think they call it parlor speed. So dance speed is real fast, and parlor speed is when you're just kind of kick back. And what a great tune to play at a nice, easy pace.
All right, kick it up.
All's well that ends well. Very nice.
Yeah, nice. Oh, I love it. Whiskey before breakfast sounds good to me. You want to know? Do you know this about in the brewery when we often brew a batch of beer on a collaboration day? We will take some of the hot wort, the first runnings of the mash, put it in a glass, mix it with bourbon or whiskey, and as we call it a hot scotchy, and we drink it as a group, as a toast to the collaboration.
This tune is called Salt Spring. It's written by a contemporary mandolin player named John Reischman. Phenomenal musician. He plays in a band called I can't remember. Not have that part in there, but anyway. John Reischman and the Jaybirds, and they're just phenomenal. All of them are just these great musicians, and he's written several tunes. We play several of them at our jam. And this one's called Salt Spring, probably his most famous. And what's different about how we're doing it is there's no mandolin, there's no finger picking banjo, there's no bass, no fiddle, just you and me. And you know this one, right?
I think so. I'll try and keep up.
Yeah, we'll do it once again at a fairly relaxed pace. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Soulboat Sessions is brought to you by Wolves and People Farmhouse Brewery in Newburgh, Oregon, brewing experimental, distinctive, and delicious farmhouse and wild ale since 2016, like Honeycomb, Instinctive Travel Saison, Oregon Beer Awards Gold Medal winner Traveling Companions, Crush Pad Pilsner, and many more. Look for our handcrafted beers across Oregon, distributed by Day One in great bottle shops in the following states so far: Colorado, North Carolina, Virginia, New York, and more to come. Wolves and People Farmhouse Brewery, which is open Wednesday through Sunday every afternoon and makes the ideal spot to gather with friends over a picnic and some delicious brews with hyper-local ingredients. Look for the weekly Bluegrass Jam every Thursday. We are Wolves and People. We are wild and sometimes tamed. Come run with us. Soulboat Sessions is recorded and produced by Wolves and People Farmhouse Brewery in a tiny but mighty 1912 cottage with old guitars on the wall and an ever-dwindling collection of fresh beers in the fridge. The show is lovingly recorded and produced and remixed to perfection by Andrew Kay, who plays a mean guitar himself. So follow him on Instagram at Andrew Kay. That's Andrew Kaye. I'm Christian DeBenedetti, your host and co-producer and the founder of Wolves and People Farmhouse Brewery. And we would really like to thank the following amazing folks for helping making this podcast happen. CAM URNES for his time and wonderful playing and conversation as always. Martin Guitars for making the D18 you heard on this episode. And we'd like you to follow us on Instagram at Soulboat Sessions and let us know what you think. Send us rants, raves, if you're really feeling the love, some $2 bills via Venmo at Wolves and People. We'll take your new ideas for episodes, corrections, complaints, odes of praise in the form of those $2 bills. And if you're an artist or a manager and you want to appear on the show, by all means, send a smoke signal to podcast at wolvesandpeople.com. And tell everyone you know that loves music and fermentation there's finally a podcast for both. So thanks for listening. Keep the strings warm and the beer cold, and see you next time on the porch.